Hello and welcome to Coffee and Bonsai with Tom. Today we're going to work on my $25 forest. This is a forest I created, I think, about 4.5 months ago. Take a quick spin of it. You can see it's growing quite well. And I'll put a link to the original video. This is its first major pruning that I've done. I wanted to get the tree established, but you can watch the first video where I created this forest. But let's take a quick trip down memory lane before we get started, and I'll show you the progress on this tree so far. So I bought this raw material you can see here in a pot from Home Depot. I think maybe it was Lowe's, and it kind of piqued my interest. It was late fall, when they're sort of getting rid of that stuff, really cheap. Um, I think I paid $5, and then there was even a discount on that. Um, and it was a variety of Portulacaria Afra that I had not worked with before. So I thought, let's try to make a bonsai forest out of this and see how it goes. So I pulled them out of the pot and, cleaned up the roots a bit. You can see here they've got, some roots that definitely need to be reduced. They're kind of long and straight down, but, overall it had quite a bit of roots, and most of the plants, the roots were kind of radiating straight out from the trunk. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised by that. Like I said, I had no experience with this particular variety of Portulacaria Afra. So I was unsure of exactly, what to expect. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. So the next step after I reduced the roots and got them nice and flat, was to take a look at each plant and figure out how I wanted to orient them in the forest. You can see they're reasonably healthy. The whole all the plants were in kind of bad shape when I got them. So my first order of business was to get them back to a reasonable amount of health by giving them some water and giving them sun and feeding them. And so yeah, the that went relatively well. And in the last picture here, you see the initial forest I put together. I sort of wired them in. Like I said, I'll link the video. You can watch that. But I didn't do anything else. I sort of have this philosophy where, if I do a lot of root work, I don't touch the top because I want the trees to be able to use those resources to grow new roots, and also the reverse, right? If I cut the top a lot, I generally don't cut the bottom because I find it just recovers much more quickly. And so, yeah, I think it's been a bit over 4 months. It was kind of late in the season, so they didn't have prime growing conditions, but, they kind of got a bit of a start. And I just let it grow. I wanted it to really, establish roots, get healthy in the pot, have the trees firm up so they don't need all the rocks and wire going forward, and just let it get established before I was going to take the next step with this forest. And today we are going to take the next step. I want to do some structural pruning and get this forest started on its way to something that is more refined and just a much nicer bonsai. And we are now back to the future. You can see it's leafed out pretty well. It's getting a bit jungly. It's kind of dark in there under some of these trees. But let's take, a bit of a look at it. It's starting to get kind of wide. The leaves are healthy. It's got a lot of new growth. Um, there have been some trials and tribulations with this planting, which I'll talk a little bit about. I got a little bit more than I bargained for this $25 fee to create this, and that was, you can see it's quite dark in here. And that was bugs. I mean, this thing had mealy bugs, it had scale, it had something else that was eating the leaves, and boy, it was a several months of battling it with soap and water and isopropyl alcohol. And I have never had such a hard time, coming in here and inspecting daily. And I just never had such a hard time getting under control. But finally, I finally won the battle. I was at one point I considered just chucking the whole thing, but I thought, you know what, this will be a test to my ability to handle uh, an insect infestation that's kind of pushing my limits, and so I was kind of glad I kept going and learned a few things around basically just checking daily, like in addition to the spray, look under every leaf and on the trunk and just kill on site. And eventually, you will get them under control. Now, the mealybugs kind of stayed on this plant, but the scale kind of went and visited some neighbors. So then I had to deal with that. So it has not been a whole lot of fun in that area. So this is my first Portulacaria Afra mammoth, and you can see they call it that because, well, the leaves are pretty large, but I think also the trunks are large, the internodes are larger. It's just overall mammoth. Um, in comparison to a more standard port. So you can see here I've got one. Look at just the difference in leaf size, and this port actually has pretty big leaves for a port. I just happened to grab this one off the shelf, but yeah, quite, it's probably like 4 times the leaf size. And also, I guess because of the surface area, these use way more water. They really do. I found I have to water them much more than my other Portulicarias, and it kind of grows big and pretty fast. But it does grow well. I mean, but this is all indoor growth primarily you're seeing here, and I've got a lot of lower growth here, and so the goal is I really want to clean this up. Get some leaves out of here. But yeah, it's a good grower. It's got nice shiny leaves. It grows quickly. I'll be excited to get it outside in the direct sun this spring and see how it reacts to that because I think this growth will be stronger and thicker and the leaves will be nice and chunky and while the leaves are bigger, they're definitely they're smaller than Crassula ovata, and I enjoy working with that plant. And we'll see. I don't know how much they'll reduce with pruning here, but probably what we're going to do today will help out. So to start off, I'm just going to cut off some of these lower leaves and branches that I don't think we'll need um, on these trees, and just cut back some of the longer stuff. Starting out with this front tree on the left, which is kind of a smaller tree. And this is the first pruning I've done at all to these. So, if you're a little squeamish, you may want to avert your eyes because I have a feeling, I'm going to cut a lot of this back. You can see a lot of these branches are just really straight. And I do think that's part of the nature of this, variety. So I may have to just live with that. But, I don't mind it straight if it's at least changing direction, which it's currently not doing. So yeah, I'm gonna cut it back probably pretty hard. Um, yeah, so just a bit of a warning, and because it's if I look at it now, I mean it's fine, but you can see as we go through and look at a lot more of these trees, look at this big leaf, like they're just huge, and I got a lot of branches going like into the tree, like into the main trunks, like that one there. This one, which I'll just uh, remove. I think I can redirect it out to the back. And yeah, I just want to get some taper and movement to this. And we also have many areas where we have multiple trunks coming out too close together, which is swelling that area of the tree. Um, but for right now, I'm just trying to thin this one out enough that I can see what I want to do with this particular tree in front. And we'll start with this one and probably just go around and prune each tree, and then come back and you know do some fine tuning once we get each tree reasonably under control. I've been pleasantly surprised with the bark on these. It is kind of a nice looking bark, and I just keep turning this tree around to see where I want to prune it. I think I'm at that trepidation stage where I'm like, okay, am I really gonna am I really gonna go whole hog in this thing? Um, and I don't know about you folks, but I kind of easily kind of go in that because many times Yeah, so we're getting the big guy out here. Um, I like to use the concave cutter on these because I've found that, if you get a really nice flat cut, um, these Portulacaria Afra dwarf jade heal really well from that. Particularly, if you can keep growth above or further out on the branch where you cut, heals rather quickly. So I'm going to take this middle section out. There's a nasty stump in here. I'm not sure you can see it. And I'm also looking at, I've got like this Y here, and I'm just trying to decide what I want to do with that. Because it's just, I mean, it doesn't exactly look like a slingshot, but it's got these two big pieces. So I'm just going to cut this off and see how that looks. So I basically want to pick one of these as the leader. You can see it's already kind of swelling a bit where that Y is. And, probably for this planting, these trunks, well, they'll slowly get bigger, but I'm sort of happy with their current size for now. So the idea here would be to, cut this back and probably get these trees to about, I don't know, half or maybe even a little less of what I want their eventual size to be, and then just, uh, grow the new growth in a much more delicate way and, create branching and taper and, make it look like a tree. So, yeah, I'm looking at this tree. You can see this branch over here. I mean, it's just long and straight, not to mention that all the growth is coming in the wrong area. So, I'm definitely going to cut that back and hopefully, we can get some new growth on this branch that is just more interesting. It's just uh, long. I'm going to take this out too. It's just too long. I think I kind of like the thick base, and so we'll kind of work with that. But I think we can get some better branching, and I'm just going to cut all these back to that first node and just generate some more interest. And we are slowly cleaning up this first tree. Sometimes you just have to take small bites and then keep going until you get. I'm going to shorten this off to create a delta between that branch and the one on the right. But yeah, I was saying you've got to you know take little bites here and there and kind of slowly approach where you're going. And sometimes that's just how you have to proceed. Sometimes you immediately see where you want to go. Um, on complex material like this, where there are a lot of options and it's very rough and has never been styled at all, typically, you're kind of feeling more in the dark and being more aggressive with what you're doing just because the material is so raw. But I think, we're kind of getting there. I'm going to clean some of this stuff out of this crotch area. I think we're going to end up with no foliage or practically nothing on this first tree, which is kind of a bit of, what do they call it, foreshadowing of what we're probably going to do to the rest of the forest. But, uh, as I look at this, yeah, we're getting down to the basics. I think I can't take a whole lot more off of this one. And I'm tempted to leave a little bit of green on here because I think it just keeps sort of the sap flowing in the plant and keeps it just helps it recover a little more quickly. But this is a pretty aggressive growing variety, so maybe I don't have to be quite so concerned with that. I'm probably going to change the front. I think I'm going to take this off because it just is too chunky. That's way better. Um, and I'll smooth it off a bit. Like I said, what I found is that by getting these wounds really, really flat, they heal pretty quickly, and before you know it, you don't even notice that you had a wound there. So I think this first tree, at least the initial work on it, is done, and you can see we cut off, I don't know, almost everything, 95% plus on that. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs, and that's at the stage we are uh, with this forest. But I think, when this fills out, we'll have a lot more options, and we can develop a lot more, intricate branching, and I think it'll really serve the entire composition much better in the long run. So let's move on to this tree over on the right. This is probably, it's certainly one of the bigger trees. I mean, I have three trees that are similar size. I'm going to start by removing all this really, really low foliage, which I'm not going to be able to use. And yeah, just looking it over briefly here. Let me just get some of this foliage out of the bottom. We've got a long straight branch here, kind of uninteresting. I'm going to cut that back as I want to get taper, movement, and more compact growth. Same thing with the top. Um, I'm just going to initially cut it back. Some of this growth has gone crazy, and then we'll get to structurally pruning the trunk. But I've got three kind of nice sized trees here, and I also took, I think, 3 or 4 cuttings off of this um, when I did, some of the initial pruning, just because I wanted to start some small trees because I think I need some finer stuff in this forest. And it's another thing I should mention. I'm really doing the primary pruning on these. I mean, I tried to pick fronts when we initially created this forest 4 months ago, but it's kind of tough to do because you'd have to make all these pruning decisions and then multiply that by, you can see I've got some parallel trunks here. So I want to pick which one I want. I've got 3 actually, 4 if you count this thing in the middle, which is quite a whirl. So I'm just going to come in here and cut that out as a first step. And then I'm going to cut off at least 1, maybe 2 of these branches because you can already see I'm sort of getting some reverse taper, and that is just going to get a lot worse over time. But getting back to the placement of the trees, yeah, it's just there's too many decisions, because you have to prune each tree and then get the orientation of each tree correct times 5. So all that to say is in the spring, or once this recovers from what we're doing today, I will more than likely, a big cut coming up here. I'm going to take this off initially, and we'll see how that goes. We're going to have to reorient these trees because I'm just pruning them today. How I like look at this long, uninteresting. I mean, I just can't use this. So I'm going to cut it back here, at least for now. And I don't know where the new front of these is going to be. I'm sort of actually figuring that out now. But then when the new growth comes in, that'll also help. So they're all going to have to be maybe repositioned, certainly rotated. Um, and yeah, I found that the way I build my forest, right, I kind of get the trees established and then do usually some heavy pruning and then finer pruning. I do find, somewhere in that, at about the 1 year point, I am kind of moving them around. I think this branch is a little too low and uninteresting. Um, and I'm not sure about this. It's also kind of straight on the top, but I think I can work with that. I mean, I think it's definitely better than it was. Like we went from what was clearly like 4 trunks down to, I'm going to shorten this off, down to basically 1 now. And like I said, I'll keep going and I'll probably come back and do some fine tuning on all these, well, trunks now, I guess I would call them. I'm just looking this one over. If I look at it from the side here, I really don't like this. So I'm gonna just come in here and do some carving, I'd say, where I'm just sort of, that actually doesn't look bad. I'll clean it up a bit, where I sort of want to smooth up this transition, and just give the trunk a nice shape, like bonsai kind of begins and ends with the trunk, right? And usually early on in the life of the tree, like we're doing here, it requires some drastic, significant work to sort of get it off on the right foot, so to speak. And I think, yeah, we've really improved this trunk. And I can imagine in my mind these things growing out, and it'll have, a nice shape. I think a nice natural shape that is reminiscent of a tree. So I think, let me clean up a bit here, but I think that trunk for right now is in pretty good shape. So let's pick our next victim here. So I've got three trees in the back still, and this is this one in the back left here. Just move it's huge, right? And I look at it, um, and it it looks like a Lincoln log back there. See if I can move these up. They're quite firm in the pot, so I feel like it'll be interesting to see when I reposition these. Um, and it's nice to have the video to see how many roots they had going in, but they didn't have a lot, and I feel like they seem really firm in here now. So this variety must really grow roots. So I'm just looking at this, trying to see it. See, it's got this bottom that is much thinner, and it's kind of a. I'm just gonna again take the growth off the really low area. Um, and it's the bark actually looks different down there. So I don't know if this tree was injured or what, but this is sort of my problem child so far in the forest, and I'm gonna start by just cutting back stuff, getting it down to a reasonable size so I can see the shape and figure out what we want to do next. So just taking off branches that, have really been growing in the last several months. And also some of these old leaves, which are quite tired looking, having gone through the insect infestation and then all my various treatments through those months. Yeah, I look at this and you can clearly see it's just got a lot of straight sections. So I'm going to come in here and try to fix that by taking this massive top off, which the tool can barely do it. Like, you definitely don't want to use your concave cutters like this on hard material because you can bend the handles, in which case they won't work very well anymore. But, on this soft stuff, yeah, it's no problem. Yeah, so I think that's better. At least we've got some movement now. But boy, the trunk we're left with is also pretty straight. Something I should have mentioned, it just occurred to me, I know a lot of folks that work on jades and Portulacaria Afra, dwarf jade, they're like, don't use a concave cutter, and I I really just disagree with that because I found it to be an invaluable tool to get in there to get a nice flat cut, to do carving a little bit what I'm doing here. And I've just found it to be a great tool. Like, it heals fabulously, and I don't even see it. But I think I kind of know where they're coming from because I did have an accident one time on a jade where I did a flat cut like this, and it was in the summer, and I had it outside, and the direct sun came. I'm just going to shorten this guy. Direct sun came and just hammered that wound. And what can happen in a jade, I think in that case it sort of like sucks water out of the plant and it sort of shrinks and puckers and creates a horrible, wound there that kind of goes in on itself, which is definitely not what you want because then you've got an area where water will form and rot. But, what I found is, if you keep it in sort of even outdoors, like semi shade or anything other than a really hot summer days, or like in this case, I have them indoors under these grow lights and there's like zero impact, right? They heal perfectly. There's none of this puckering and it just works out really well. So that would be my feeling on the concave cutter is I find it absolutely critically essential, but just be aware of let these wounds scab over a bit before you put it right into full direct, 85-degree summer sun. And this is a lot better. Still, I really don't like that long straight section, but um, like I said, we will come back to that probably in the fine tuning stages of this structural pruning. So let's move on to what the one fourth tree, I guess. So they got this small one over here in the back, which I think has a nice shape. It it's kind of a charming little tree. But like the other ones, it is just really straight because it has never been pruned in its life. So I'm going to start the same way. I'll take off this low growth, and we'll get a look at the structure of the tree. Got some stubs there in the crotch of that I can take out. And it helps to look at the front. Like I said, we're going to reorient all these trees, but just to see where you might want to go. So that was a big cut. I really want to substantially reduce the height to get some movement in this, so it's a bit more interesting. And we'll see. Maybe this variety, what I'm trying to do by getting all this taper in low, I'm really taking it back, might not work because this thing likes to grow pretty straight. In which case, we can have a tall single trunk, kind of narrow conical forest, if that turns out to be the case with these, and they don't want to ramify and branch in the way that I wanted to grow. But in any case, they needed some foundational structural pruning. So this one actually looks pretty good, I think, although we'll come back to it. Maybe it might still be a bit too tall. Yeah, I'm going to take this off and, just have like a nice chunky stump there that we can work with. Yeah, and I think that'll work out. That'll work out pretty good for that one. Boy, really, really reduce that uh, small tree. So yeah, I think it's taken shape. You can certainly see, the ground. I got some roots sticking up here. I think those were there in the initial planting, but let's take a quick look at the carnage cam here. And wow, yeah, there's not a lot of green up top here. But you know, like I said, you sort of have to make these drastic moves early on in the life of most trees if you want decent results. I don't want to wait to do this in 3 years when everything's swollen up and gotten worse. And it looks like we're down to the last major tree here in the center, which is a pretty good sized tree. Again, I'm just going to take this stuff off the lower trunk that is just too low to be useful. And because I think these trees, if I remember correctly, I think they're planted at a decent height relative to their roots. So I think they're not going to go deeper, or I'm not going to pull them up much anyway from their current height. And looking at this one, it's maybe in a bit better shape than some of the others. It doesn't have like whorls of 3 and 4 trunks coming out, but it's pretty tall and it's got some long straight sections that sort of grab your eye in a, like I said before, sort of a Lincoln log uh, fashion. And I'm just trying to think about what I want to do with this one. And, like I said before, I think I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go with this, but this top section is just too straight and, there's no taper. It's got 1, 2, 3, 5 segments. So I'm just going to start by taking the top off of this because I know I don't want that. And yeah, if I weren't in a ruthless mode, I'd be making more cuttings, but yeah, I'm not. I'm going to resist that urge and not do that. So already that's better. I mean, you can see even if I choose this straight section on the left here as the trunk, we've got a little bit of movement there, and it's a little more interesting. And actually, there's quite a few segments on that piece, so I think we can choose that. And it's got some decent taper where it's like, I don't know, maybe it goes. It's probably like half the height on the left. But then I could also choose this trunk on the right, although it's significantly thicker. And it kind of looks like a slingshot here, so I think I am going to have to make a decision. And, I kind of like the one on the left, but I think I might be better off sticking with this one on the right because I don't know, it just looks more like a more natural movement to me, and it sort of blends in, and it does have some taper. So let me just cut this off. Maybe we can have a branch coming out this way and take a look at it. I also have an opportunity here to reduce this main branch because it's also pretty uninteresting, and just kind of come down and develop a new leader and get more taper. And I'm going to get rid of this old growth in the crotch there that looked like it died off. And maybe we'll get something coming out this way from this first segment right there, or even the one below it. Um, and hey, I've already reduced everything else. I may as well take more of that off. Uh, I think I'm gonna clean this up on the top. But yeah, we've reduced that one quite a bit, and I feel like um, it's probably good enough for now. And we will decide if we're gonna do more in the final review here. So let's take a quick look here. I want to come back to this one because um, it just bothers me. So maybe I'll start by cleaning this up a little bit better. Like I said, I like to really carve these down and kind of leave it exactly how I want it to look, and that tends to work out for me. But this long section, as I'm cleaning this up, it's just so straight, and I do have a few, one, two, three, I guess four segments there, and so uh, maybe that'll work out. And like I said, I mean, it sort of looks horrible now because I have to reorient everything and change all the fronts, but we'll let it recover from growth. Like that first tree there probably has to be completely turned around, as do some of the others. But let's focus in on this one that's just continuing to bother me. I think I'm gonna start by cutting this back. I mean, I look at this and it's just too straight. Um, and let's see if this has improved it or not. I think it's definitely better, because at least now that first branch, I mean, it was the height of the trunk. So this is an improvement. And then, the tree, if you look at the base, it's just, it's very thin and it looks kind of weird. Uh, and it's in the back. I'm almost wondering, I don't think this tree is going to make the cut, that one in the back. This one looks, I think, pretty good. So I think we can keep this main tree. It's actually, I think, the most interesting, because it's got a couple of low branches coming out on the left, and it's pretty chunky. So I think that this main tree, sorry, I had it out of camera, looks pretty good. I mean, you can imagine this filling out, and we'll do a bit more refinement, but I think that'll be good. And probably that, it's the front is currently facing the back, but I'm going to cut this off and make it even a little stumpier to create more taper, because these things grow like crazy on the top anyway. Let's look at this one. This big chunky bit on the left kind of bothers me a bit because we've got a branch on the right which is much, much finer. And I'm just wondering if I want to clean that up a bit more. I think I'll definitely shorten it a bit because I'll just take it down to one node everywhere. I'm going to take this down to one node and we'll get, that'll create more movement and taper. And as I look at this, yeah, I think I'm just going to have to take this off. It's too high up, it's too bulky, and it just doesn't look good. And yeah, that's way better. At least now the tree has a nice, I don't know, sinewy flow, I would say. And and I'm sure we'll get some branching, near there. and we can work with that. But I think, we're basically just creating trunks today, and I think that with that cut, that's a much, much better trunk. So I think things are shaping up. I mean, basically what I always do in these final reviews is anything that just sticks out to me in a bad way, I just fix it, like this is a little bulky here. I'm just going to carve this down and make it a bit smoother. Transition. Looking at this one in the back, you know, I think in the same way, I'm just going to take this off. Like, I think we'll get a new branch there, and I think it'll look a lot more natural. But other than that, I think that middle back tree, looks pretty good. It's got a nice low branch here in the back, which you kind of want in your trees in the back, but we'll see. I've got smaller trees, but I come back to this one, and this is just a problem tree. Like, I look at it and I'm not sure what I can do with it. So I think I'm just going to go radical. Need something a little heavier. It's quite thick. And, you know, part of the problem is it just looks almost diseased with this stuff on the bottom. So I'm going to cut the complete top off and regrow it from this troublesome looking section up. And, it does have, it's kind of barky. So who knows? Maybe this will work out. But I sort of feel like this tree is going to be ejected from the forest, and when we reorient this one will go out, and we'll see what happens. But if you saw my first video, 2025, I want to be a little more ruthless, and this tree is just not good. So, and I had reservations from the beginning, so I'm just cutting it back to the part that I think is good, and then we'll see where we go, and if we lose it, then we lose it. But uh, maybe I will be able to use it here. I don't know, but like I said, I have several small ones which I think uh, which would do better in the back there. So we'll fix all that in the spring. But yeah, I'm happy with that last radical cut, and I think that kind of concludes the pruning portion of the show. We really cut a lot off. Look at that. I mean, it's basically, I don't know, that's basically 100%. Um, you know, considering round off. But we'll put this back on the bench and we'll see how these work out. There is another thing I want to do to this before I kind of probably allow it to sit and just recover and grow new leaves until spring, and that's fix some of these rocks. I sort of like them to look like they've been there for a while, and it's really been bothering me every time I water this thing. So I'm going to kind of, you know, just make them look a little better. And what I found is, if you just kind of dig a little bit and kind of tap them in, and then dump soil between the trunk and the rock and around the rock, it's just amazing. It radically improves how it looks with very little effort. And, you know, to me, it sort of gives sort of a fake Nabari to the tree. And I'm sure also because you're kind of mounding it up. So you know, not only does it kind of look more like a Nabari now, but you're actually giving those roots and the real Nabari a chance to continue to swell up and grow there and develop a real Nabari, which you can then slowly expose. So that's a little trick. I think it not only makes it look better, but it also, I think, horticulturally helps the tree develop, what you're trying to give the impression of. And I probably have a few too many rocks in here. Maybe I should take this one out, but then I'd have to find a place to to put it. So I'll just put it back in there. Um, and yeah, that is a radical cut on that. It'll be interesting to me to see how that kind of comes out, but yeah, it sort of looks out of place now, but we'll see how it goes. So while we're finishing up here, let's do the thought for the day. I think a good one is, if you want to make omelets, you have to break a few eggs. And, there comes a time in every bonsai's life early on, hopefully, at least that's what I recommend, or in a forest like this, where You really have to make some drastic cuts to get the tree started out on the right foot because you just can't build a great house on a very poor foundation. So you really want to get the trunk and the roots worked out. Um, you know, I think, especially in a variety like this where you can do radical work, in the first year, like and other kinds of deciduous and conifers, that may take 3, 4, 5 years, but you can move pretty quickly with these jades. And yeah, I'm really happy with where we got here. I know it looks radical. I'm probably going to get some some emails, um, but I think we've set this up for a great future. And like I said, I will put this back on the indoor bench and we'll grow it out. And there'll be updates. Show you how quickly this recovers or doesn't recover based on whatever the case may be. And in the springtime, we will tackle this thing once again. And with that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.